What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, another Scouting Steelers episode. We're going to go over Rutgers cornerback Max Melton, a guy who has, seen his stock rise quite a bit throughout the draft process. Seems like he's getting some top 50 buzz now. He made Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 recently for NFL Network. He's a guy that, I like quite a bit, someone that the Steelers have shown extensive interest in. So kind of what we're doing with this kind of series is just going over all the top 30 visitors for the Steelers pre-draft. Four of those guys ended up being draft picks by the Steelers last cycle, and then they also, signed Darius Rush off waivers. So just trying to get you guys a little bit more familiar with some of these prospects that, have a high likelihood of, ending up as Steelers here in less than 10 days once the NFL draft weekend kicks off. So I want to try to give you guys, all of my scouting notes, the most in-depth, comprehensive analysis that I can possibly provide. So just before we get started, going over this dude's strengths, weaknesses, athletic testing, all that stuff, just do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment, all that good stuff. We're going to be going over offensive line scouting reports the rest of the week. I'm really excited to give you guys my thoughts on those. And then, like I said, a lot of pre-draft stuff, a lot of draft content coming your guys' way. I'm going to be streaming on draft weekend, so you guys can come check me out and come, chop it up, talk some ball before, things get started. So without further ado, let's talk about Max Melton, man. So Max Melton, Rutgers cornerback. He's an experienced four-year starter. He started over 40 games in his collegiate career, over 2,000 career defensive snaps. Dude's got a lot of experience, man. That's definitely a positive in his profile. Like I said, the Steelers have had extensive contact with him, have showed a lot of public interest. They saw him at the Senior Bowl, obviously. They met with him formally at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and they also have brought him in for a top 30 visit to the facility. So a lot of boxes checked there, man. Like there's a very clear level of interest in Melton, and I think, for obvious reasons. If you look at Melton's tested extremely well. His 9.09 relative athletic score is in the elite category. If you guys aren't familiar with that, go follow MathBomb on Twitter/X. But you just look at some of the measurables, man. He's 5'11". He's 187 pounds, over 32-inch arms. So he's got a lean frame, but he's got long arms, got a lot of length, and that's definitely something that shows up on his film. We'll talk about that in the strengths category. Very, very explosive, man. Also something that really pops on film. 40 and a half inch vertical, and then 11-foot 4-inch broad jump, both in the elite categories. He ran a 4.39 40-yard dash, a 1.55 10-yard split. Also great in the speed categories. The agilities were just okay. 4.87 short shuttle and a 6.82 3-cone. We'll kind of get to some of that as we get further along. But, kind of my strengths column in my scouting notes of him, really unique combination of length and speed. He's got a lot of press man reps on his resume, man. Like definitely somebody who isn't afraid to get at the line of scrimmage. He shows a lot of confidence regardless of the opponent. He had a bunch of competitive reps, I felt like, against Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft this past season in 2023. Also had some good reps against him in 2022. I wouldn't say that he necessarily won those matchups, but he was competitive throughout. That's definitely something I appreciated, him getting impressed and being willing to mix it up. One of the things I really love about his game, he can flip his hips with zero delay in his transition. He carries speedier threats vertically down the sideline. I didn't see this dude get stacked. I think I watched 4 or 5 games. I didn't see this dude get stacked one time. I mean, you talk about just straight line speed and linear explosiveness. This dude has it. Cornerback is a stopwatch position. If you guys have, listened to me talk about this position on any medium over the years, that's something I value. Like speed is, paramount at this position. I watched this dude run stride for stride with Roman Wilson, wide receiver from Michigan. I know you guys are probably really familiar with him if you follow the draft stuff. He's an undersized burner, but I watched him carry him vertically on 9 routes, stay step for step with him. And then, he had a really nice rep on a deep over route in the red zone that he, pretty much put an end to as well. So a lot of good reps from a speed perspective. He does like to mix up his technique at the line of scrimmage. This dude is not a finesse player. He is a physical player who understands how to use his length. He'll use his long arms to control, delay routes or delay targets from getting into the routes. A lot of timing stuff gets thrown off because he establishes that first contact at the line of scrimmage. We'll mix in 1- and 2-hand jams. He shows explosive bursts when driving downhill, especially when in off coverage. Click and close ability, very evident. Like I said, this dude's explosive when he's moving downhill towards the line of scrimmage. And flashes of impressive ball, a ton of ball production. I think 8 interceptions, like 22 pass breakups or something like that. Some of his interceptions aren't of the, lucky variety either. All interceptions aren't created equal. But this dude, has reps where he's tracking the ball over his shoulder. He's high pointing the football. He's, stepping in from off coverage, and, breaking on the ball and, taking good angles and things like that. And I think that there's definitely going to be a real path for him being a difference maker in that regard at the next level. He's just a really tough player who I feel like is wired the right way. You watch this dude play, you can tell he really loves football. He's more than willing to, come up and engage blockers downhill to defend the run and screen passes. This dude mixes it up, man. That's definitely something I value a lot when I watch college corners. I want to see like you have to be able to tackle at the next level. I just feel like it's paramount, and this dude definitely checks the boxes in terms of want to. He's a good pre-snap communicator. He's constantly talking with his teammates. So he's somebody that I definitely think out there understands like the value of communication. He also blocked 4 punts in college. I mean, this dude was pretty sick on special teams. I feel like the most impressive one that I saw was against Michigan. He actually lined up all the way on the outside of, basically where the tackle would be on special teams. And he looped into the A gap, and you just saw him take off like he was shot out of a cannon and ended up blocking a punt. They ended up recovering it and scored a touchdown off of it. He does have the NFL bloodlines the Steelers typically look for. His brother Bo Melton was drafted, I think, by the Seahawks, but he plays for the Packers now. A guy that I think also went to Rutgers, if I remember correctly. He's from an athletic family. Definitely something that Pittsburgh, like every team, mostly, show some interest in that regard. In terms of the negatives to his scouting report, some things I feel like he needs to work on. There was just a lot of missed tackles on his tape this past season. He missed 26% of his tackle attempts. That's an astronomically high number. One thing that I will say that when I was kind of doing research on him, if you look at like Dane Brugler from the Athletic, he always has all these that you necessarily don't hear about a lot, but he was dealing with a broken hand. He didn't talk about it at all. So that is necessary context when you take into account like how he played last year. But I will say he does have a lean frame. He will fall off tacklers, and there's just some poor technique mixed in there too. So that doesn't completely wash that away. But prior to this season, he was kind of an average to slightly a below average tackler according to the metrics. So not something I'm super, super concerned about as a huge red flag, but it is something worth mentioning. I wouldn't consider him a naturally reactive athlete in terms of, sticking with guys in and out of their breaks or just anticipating routes in general. There is some segmented transitions on film that kind of give me a little bit of pause. Really, this was evident against guys that really knew how to manipulate him with, fakes and things like that. Good route runners, I felt like could kind of get him a little bit over the middle of the field. He needs to do a better job of establishing a contact key to help defend stop routes on the outside. What I mean by that is, he has no problem. He's really fluid in terms of flipping his hips and running vertically with receivers. There's just sometimes where he's a little too comfortable and lacks giving up too much space between him and the receiver. His eye discipline was sometimes hit or miss in terms of where it needed to be. But when you don't have, that contact key and getting that inside hand on the receiver's hip, it's really difficult to tell like when that receiver is about to decelerate and work back to the football on like hitches and comebacks. And he's definitely the type of athlete that I feel like can get back into phase and, contest those throws. It's just, like I said, sometimes just too much space. And that's a coachable, that's a teachable thing and something that I'm not extremely worried about, just something he needs to work on. Penalties were a little bit of an issue. He's really is just a result of, I feel like, being over aggressive down the field. There's some tugging at the hip when he doesn't necessarily need to, or just not finding the ball. Like I said, the ball production is excellent, but he honestly left some plays on the field in terms of just not finding the football, some face guarding type stuff instead of, sometimes when he was out of phase, he has the recovery ability and the speed to get back in. He was beaten on like double moves and things like that, but he just didn't always look back for the ball once he got back in phase, which, ended up in penalties. And there were some times where I felt like, he left plays on the field. So, and then also something else worth noting that Dane brought this up in the Athletic, the Beast. You guys should check that out. Back in 2021, he was arrested for involvement in a paintball incident that led to a couple people being injured and a short suspension from the football team. He owned up to the mistake. He said, "I made a mistake, let my team and my family down." Not really something I'm like super worried about. There's no other like character concerns or anything like that. Sometimes young kids, but definitely, something worth mentioning, something that I'm sure teams will ask about, throughout the pre-draft process and interviews and things like that. Overall, I feel like Melton's tape is inconsistent, but I feel like some of the issues are just really fixable with the right coaching staff. And that's why it gives me kind of optimism for him to be a lot more than what, he even was in college. I feel like long corners who understand how to use their length to their advantage are explosive. Linear movers with really good speed plus ball skills are pretty valuable in my eyes. I mean, if you're long and you can run and you can play the football in the air, like those are definitely things that I feel like are, boxes checked in my eyes of what I kind of prioritize for the position. I do feel like his athletic profile is a little bit better suited for the outside. So that's something, I feel like a lot of people are talking about him as kind of like this day one slot or nickel player inside. I think he has inside to outside versatility because I do like his toughness and willingness to mix it up versus the run. This dude's wired the right way. So, like, he can definitely play inside and checks the box in that regard. But I just feel like his athletic profile, the way that he moves, is better suited on the outside than it is on the inside. For the Steelers specifically, that's kind of an interesting discussion because they don't have anybody on the roster right now that actually has slot experience. So I feel like if you're bringing Melton in on day 2 of the draft, you would probably be looking to get him on the field early, and maybe the slot is the easiest way to do that because Dante Jackson, Joey Porter Jr. are outside cornerbacks. They have been through their career far. So it's just something to monitor. Like I said, I'm not saying he can't do it, but just like some of the change of direction stuff, especially like when it comes to mirror and route runners and things like that, I don't think are necessarily great against some of those shiftier targets that you may see on the inside that I think may give him a little bit of problems. But we'll see. I do think Melton has CB2 type of upside, should be a top 3 cornerback relatively early in his career. Like I said, because of the experience, he's played a lot of ball. He has some good games or good reps against really good competition, which is something that I value. But I also feel like his special teams acumen just gives him a really nice floor. Should his development, kind of stall on the outside, hopefully that's not the case because I do think he has the upside there. But I also think, when you're talking about guys that could potentially flame out, like this dude, I just don't see him flaming out. Like I just think that his special teams acumen is going to give him such a high floor. Like I said, the 4 punts blocked is one thing, but he also has experience as a gunner. So that's something that's, kind of cool as well. I know he has worked, on punt coverage, kick coverage teams, things like that. So I do feel like from day one, like this dude can come in and be an asset on special teams, which is something you need. The Steelers have, lost some special teams key players. And, obviously you're not drafting this dude top 50 to come in and play special teams. But I do feel like, it's at least a positive part in his profile that he can come in and contribute as a rookie in that regard and kind of, help you kind of fill 2 holes at once. So overall, I gave Milton a late second round grade. I'm a little bit higher on him than the consensus. Although like I said earlier in the video, I do feel like he is generating a little bit more buzz recently. Like I said, he ended up in Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. Right at 50, I believe. But I do feel like he's an ideal pick for the Steelers on day 2 because they need speed at cornerback. One of the things I talked about all offseason was getting faster on defense. They allowed a lot of explosive pass plays last year, and I felt like a lot of those explosive pass plays were just as a result of, just not having enough team speed. And Melton is that's something that I feel like is very valuable on defense. And like I said, I just feel like this dude's wired the right way. I could definitely see him having a long, successful career as a contributor on defense who also adds value on special teams. So we'll see. Like I said, the Steelers have shown him a ton of interest. I feel like the corners that they've shown the most interest in have probably been like Clemson's Nate Wiggins. But aside from Wiggins, I feel like they've shown as much, if not more, interest in Melton than anyone else. So I was pretty underwhelmed. If you guys follow me on Twitter, y'all probably heard me say this, but I was pretty underwhelmed with like the day 2 and day 3 cornerbacks. Some of the guys that I'm actually a little bit higher on or like on day 2, guys like Melton, Renardo Green from Florida State, Elijah Jones from Boston College are actually not getting really hardly any buzz, I feel like, on social media or within other draft analysts opinions. Some guys like Andrew Phillips, who also has a top 30 with the Steelers, are generating more buzz. And to be honest with you, like I feel like Melton's tape is a little bit inconsistent, but I feel like it was definitely head and shoulders above where Phillips was. And I also think that like he's probably a better straight line athlete, even though Phillips might have him in terms of the change of direction stuff. But he's definitely someone that if the Steelers wait, to address the position on day 2 of the draft, I do think cornerback's a need. I did a video yesterday talking about the top 5 needs that the Steelers have on the roster right now. And I feel like cornerback, specifically slot cornerback, was at the top of that list. And I think Melton could potentially be able to fill that void, even though I do, like I said, prefer him on the outside. But if you guys made it this far through the video, I appreciate y'all. A lot more scouting reports coming this week. You guys can find all my positional rankings. Max Melton actually came in as my number 8 cornerback on SteelersNow.com. I will link all of those rankings in the description. plenty of videos coming for you guys this week. Like I said, we're going to get to some offensive linemen that the Steelers have had contact with. Going to get you guys my scouting notes on all of those players. And I will be back hopefully tomorrow with another video. But I appreciate you guys. Peace and love.